Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Zach Celadonia.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and just who is this guy that's over here, this Harry Potter-looking fellow on a Victory Monday? One Flash, Zach Celadonia. Flash, man, I'm tired, dude. These night games, they wear on me, but I'm a happy camper this morning, so it was all worth it. How you doing, my friend?
I'm the boy who lived through the beginning of the Steelers' tumultuous season so far. I'm good, really good. I don't want to get ahead of myself here, Joe, but I think the Steelers might go to the Super Bowl.
I think the Steelers. All right, you know what? We're putting that cart out in front of the horse right now, dude. Because let me rewind to about a year ago. Remember we were talking about Kenny and the Jets was going to be the big Kenny pick. Or that was actually 2 years ago. He was going to make his big debut.
Yeah, that was my claim to fame right here. The Boo game. I got framed behind me. Me and my buddy got on TV back there on my
You're
back
there.
there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the weatherman thing. I never know where to point when I'm on screen, but
I know you'd think I'd be used to it by now, but I catch myself trying to fix my beard or my hair from time to time, and I always grab the wrong side. But we're not here for my looks.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it was a great night. They finally got a proper introductions for the teams. Didn't have that in the last game against the Cowboys. That was at home because of the weather delay. It was nice to be out of there at a decent hour at least. You had the Super Bowl 9 in 1974. I always get the damn numbers, the Roman numerals screwed up, but you had a lot of the old timers there or family that was representing them, as was the case with several players. And then Mean Joe Green gets announced last. There were other luminaries and celebrities, as we know. Former president was there. Antonio Brown and Liv Bell were there. It was just it was a rock star environment for both primetime games. Because you go back to the Cowboys one, and that's old time rivalry and everything like that. But they incorporated some of that in here with the Jets. Of course, Snoop was there. Now Snoop does voiceover for some of the introduction stuff, some of the videos, along with Michael Keaton, who had a great comment about this game. He goes, with the Jets, he's like, the Steelers have had 3 coaches in 55 years. The Jets, they have 2 coaches in the last 2 weeks. And he was just dumping on them, man. I was like, I can't believe they're actually playing something like this, because you go to the Colts, they're the most friendliest people. They're come on in with open arms. They even played Renegade again. That's the second time I've been in Lucas Oil, and they played Renegade before the game. And they were welcome Steelers fans or something like that, because they know they bought half of the damn seats or whatever. But yeah, anyways, Super Bowl, man. Not AFC finalists or whatever the Colts have in the rafters there. They still do. They got totally roasted for it, and it's still they still have the banner up. But I gave this some thought. And I know we're biased, and Brian and I sat and we did the predictions, and we thought they could roll through most of this beginning schedule. It's if they've really been tested yet. Somebody was asking that. And, a lot of people were anti-Russell Wilson. Shame on the people for booing as early as they did. We're going to get into all of that talk, of course. But just seeing what they put on display and knowing they got some other reinforcements coming now too, guys that are hurt that may become rejoining this team, guys on suspension. You got Cam Sutton, Zach Frazier should be back soon, Nick Herbig back soon. I mean, this is some interesting developments for the Steelers team, because if they're going to lay 30 on somebody, especially a solid Jets defense, this is a Jets team, unlike the Steelers. The media propped up preseason, just like they had done the Browns before it. Now look at you. Where are these teams at? And they had the Steelers last place, everything. And I know there's still another half of the season to play, but there is a lot of reason for optimism, because if they play mistake-free football with Russell Wilson able to make, I didn't count, I was going to look to see how many 30-yard plus plays were in this Arthur Smith offense. It makes the Steelers a very dangerous team against Kansas City, where Mahomes is just giving up the ball. Josh Allen historically gives up the ball, and the Steelers are just gimme, gimme, gimme. They're going to take.
Yeah, an opportunistic defense is what they call that. And it's a good time to get hot, because the second half of the season, I was just looking at that today because I wanted to check and see if we happen to play the Patriots another time this season, for no reason in particular other than one of my friends in one of my group chats is a Patriots fan, and he was trying to give me shit this morning about Justin Fields. So I wanted to see if we played the Patriots, so I could tell him he had his payback coming. But it's a good time to get hot for the Steelers. They play all of their divisional games on the second half of the season upcoming. And if what we saw last night is a sneak peek at how the rest of the season is going to go, how can you not be excited? Like you just mentioned, there's going to be a lot of guys coming back off of injury, a lot of important guys. Nick Herbig had just started to come into his own zone. You got Cam Sutton coming back, who I honestly had forgotten was even on the team. And last night, even without a couple of key starters on the offensive line like Zach Frazier, Troy Fatanu is still out injured. James Daniels is lost for the season. They still were able to hold up fairly well against a pretty ferocious Jets defensive line led by Williams. And they had C.J. Mosley, who was a non-factor all game. The only time I saw C.J. Mosley was at the beginning of the game when NBC showed him pumping up the Jets defense. That's the only thing I saw him do. And Sauce Gardner got picked on all night. I know he got hurt at one point and came back into the game, but George Pickens owned him with the help of Russell Wilson's assistants, of course. And I thought it was a really, really fun game to watch. The first game in a long time. I know last week against the Raiders, the Steelers eclipsed 30 points, but this was really the first game since 2018, I want to say, many, many, many moons ago, that the offense was clicking as well as it did. And I know it started slow, even as a Justin Fields guy and somebody who wanted him to keep the job the whole time. You could hear the boos on TV. Collinsworth and Tirico mentioned the boos on TV. I said on Twitter, it feels a little early for the boos, man. I didn't think it was really necessarily appropriate at that time in the game. And I was really patient and nice to Russell Wilson as the game began. And then I got a couple more drinks in me, and I was influenced by Twitter and other people texting me, like my mom, my friends, because majority of the company I keep were pro Justin Fields keeping the job. And I sent out one tweet about Russell Wilson not playing that well. And right on cue, that was seconds before Beanie Bishop got the interception and minutes before Russell Wilson drove us down and scored a touchdown. And then I was on board.
Man, that's funny because my cousin's sitting there like distraught, of course, as he is. I told you we had a few of the adult beverages. And it's the second possession. You know, the Steelers get on the board first with a field goal. It's 7 plays, 42 yards. Actually,
I was happy with that. I was marginally happy with that. I was like, scoring drive, first drive. I tried to look at it objectively, and I kept thinking to myself, how would I be looking at this right now? How would I be celebrating or feeling if this was Fields doing this? And I was happy with the early 3 points. And then the next few drives didn't go so well. And I was like, all right, this might not be working. And then that goes to show you what I know, because after that very moment that I thought that, things just clicked and turned around, and Russell Wilson gained confidence and was throwing better and looking better. And I'm happy it went that way.
Yeah, I got a lot of random things to throw out. Number one, you mentioned Patriots, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because where are they at right now? Like they're
I think they have the number 1 pick in the draft.
They're 1-6, man. I mean, they're really bad. They're neck and neck with the same with the Carolina Panthers, 1-6, 1-win team. Cleveland Browns are 1-6, and you look at the teams that post their franchise quarterback. Saints post Drew Brees. Credit to Brad, my cousin, for bringing this up, by the way. And he's absolutely right. You look at the difference. They got rid of Sean Payton. They try to go with a whole new coach, try and wipe the slate clean. And they're very mid, right? Everybody wanted to throw dirt on the Steelers the same way as Patriots with post Tom Brady, Bill Belichick gone. Now you see how that's going. Denver Broncos. I mean, geez, oh man, since Peyton Manning left, they've been going through the ringer on all the quarterbacks. I know the Steelers may not have it settled. We might be looking a little too far ahead as far as Russell Wilson's success yesterday and the consistency of that. But to be able to get the job done in the way that Mike Tomlin has with post-Ben Roethlisberger quarterbacks as Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Justin Fields, now Wilson, who yesterday looked like the best of the bunch, easily looked like the best of the bunch. What did Wilson end up with? I got it here. Let's
16
see.
16 to 29 or something?
Yep, 16 to 29, 264 yards. Now, it wasn't 60% completion rate, and it was pretty poor. I meant to snap the first half stats, and I'll go back and look at them. 2 touchdowns passing, 1 on the ground. And people were saying, oh, Russell Wilson, he's got, I had Browns fans trying to needle me a little bit. And they're like, well, how long do you think Russell Wilson has left in the National Football League or whatever? And I said, longer than Deshaun Watson right now. And not to dump on the guy getting hurt, but he was playing poorly before the injury. And now the injury just, that sets him back even further if he ever, I don't know, he wasn't getting back to form to begin with. Whereas,
you got Browns fans talking about drafting a quarterback now. That they purposefully, I've seen a bunch of Browns fans tweet about this, post about this, talk about this. They just want a tank now. They want a quarterback, and the fans booed when he got up from the injury. They cheered when he got hurt. Like they're fed up, and I'm not gonna come down on the fans for doing that. Deshaun Watson's a bad guy, so you don't want to cheer for injuries or root for them. But I'm not gonna condemn anybody for doing it to him. He's a bad guy.
Well, not according to Myles Garrett. He said he was mostly stand-up character or whatever, stand-up guy through college, and he said like most of the pros was.
He said
quote,
most of the pros.
Most of the
yeah,
pros.
What's hiding behind that door that's labeled most of?
Oh man, but that's the point. You have, and not to just dump on the Browns, but it's just like where you see these teams at right now, and where people are always like, fire Mike Tomlin, fire Arthur Smith, terrible coach, this, that, and the other thing. You need to go get a wide receiver too. And it's like, well, let's see what happens when you get the quarterback in there. And lo and behold, not only do you put up 37 points, you get your star players the ball and they score. Najee Harris, George Pickens both over 100 yards, one with rushing, one with receiving. And everything just looks different. And the big plays that were in this game, it looks and feels different where you go, uh-oh, versus, these other teams are still kind of spinning their wheels. And yeah, I have the same cautious optimism about Russell Wilson. Of course, I'm a big Russell Wilson stan. I put the picture up there because he was my favorite guy. When he came off of the Seahawks to the Broncos, I went, uh-oh, not in the AFC. And then it didn't work out. And I was like, well, I started to sour on it. Is he too old? Can he not get it done? Let's see what it takes for the full season. But it certainly is something where you look at a primetime game like Sunday Night Football, can you go toe-to-toe with Aaron Rodgers? Now you're starting to think like Aaron Rodgers. These are the teams that they all propped up, and these teams just aren't. They're just fading into the oblivion. Now the Steelers have all their divisional games coming up, but the Cincinnati Bengals don't necessarily scare me as far as an opponent. The Bengals or the Browns, their coach of the year. They didn't re-sign the comeback player of the year. They had assistant coach of the year, defensive player of the year, and you see what happens with that quarterback position with no other backup plan, especially when you shell out all the money. He's a $65 or $67 million cap hit each of the next 2 seasons and another 20 plus past that. That's wild to think about. They would have to get a rookie, and maybe the rookie works, maybe they don't. Jaden Daniels, Drake May. There's different ways to handle it. You see CJ Stroud versus Bryce Young too, and where Bryce Young, you got to sit him down. Maybe Bryce Young becomes buddy. Maybe he takes some time. Maybe Fields needed to see what happened last night. What Russell Wilson, he just got rid of the ball when the plays weren't there, and there was nothing wrong with that. I think just the one sack that he took,
that sounds right. One, maybe 2, but yeah, the one, and then he escaped with like a 1-yard rush. But yeah, he did a better job than I had thought he was going to do as far as avoiding pressure. Some guys got through, but he either was able to throw the ball away or just scamper ahead for like maybe a 1-yard gain. But his mobility being not as good as Justin Fields' wasn't as big of an Achilles heel as I had assumed it was going to be. And speaking of Justin Fields, it's kind of similar how people were talking about coaching mattering so much with Justin Fields and how he seemingly was doing a lot better for the Steelers than he had in Chicago. Denver and Russell Wilson, there's a lot of factors that could have played into him not working out there to the fullest extent. There's documentation that him and Sean Payton just did not get along. I know Sean Payton was only his coach for a year, but the first year he was there, I believe there were stories about him not being fully healthy. I believe a shoulder injury might have played into it. And then there's all the pressure of all the money he made, all the criticism from the fans for his corniness, and just the money he's making and not producing at the level at which he's being paid. And then Sean Payton gets in there, and people have talked about this a lot of times, but his numbers when Denver decided to bench him were actually pretty good. But it's well known that he was benched because they approached him with the option of adjusting his contract, and he didn't want to do it. So they benched him. so they didn't have to pay him all the money that they owed him, which in the end came back to bite him anyway, because he's on the Steelers now for $1.5 million, and they're still paying him close to $40 million over there from the Broncos. So I don't think you should fault yourself. I shouldn't really come down on myself too hard for thinking it was a shot in the dark, might not work out. Hopefully it does if things are the best case scenario with Russell Wilson. He came out and played really, really well, but there was reason for fans to kind of be cautious about it and be hesitant to just turn to him after Justin Fields had gotten us to a 4-2 start. But as Tomlin mentioned in his press conference, when asked by Brandon Marshall, of all people, why did he make the change, or how did you feel about making the change? And he says, that's why I'm highly compensated. And that was his walk-off statement to end his press conference, which is just so badass.
Yeah.
But just like the Russell Wilson thing that I caught people doing, and again, I was somebody who was wrong. I can put my hand up and say, I've always said I'll respect people more, media members, podcasters, radio hosts, when you can admit you were wrong about something. If you can't laugh at yourself and have fun and enjoy the success of your football team, you're in it for the wrong reasons. You're not having fun. Football's a game. It's supposed to be fun. And I was wrong about thinking that Russell Wilson wouldn't be able to do better than Justin Fields did. It was evident last night that he was able to do better and that Mike Tomlin made the right decision. But you still had people in the comments saying, oh, yeah, he's so well compensated. Let's see a playoff win. Playoff wins. What's his playoff record since 2018? You know what the playoff record, you know why it's bad since 2018, 2017? Because we haven't had a quarterback since then. we had Ben in his final seasons playing on 1.5 arms. We had the Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph experience, and we had a year with Mason and Duck. So his playoff record, I believe, pretty certainly, there's a direct correlation to the fact that the quarterback position hasn't been above the line. And along with Mike Tomlin not getting the credit I think he fully deserves for making the decision and laying his nuts on the table and putting Russell Wilson in there, there are people who look at me going to bat for Russell Wilson. Now, last night after he made a couple plays, and I tried to give him credit, as you should, as a fair and unbiased viewer, even though being a Steeler fan, you have to be a little biased. People would comment to me saying, oh, well, that's George Pickens. That's Pat Freiermuth bailing him out. The receivers are making plays, but players make plays. Like, Russell Wilson still gave them the chance to make those plays. Justin Fields didn't not give guys chances. He did. Justin Fields made plenty of plays through his 4-2 start. But Russell Wilson has a better touch on the deep balls and just a better ability and understanding of how to get those balls in the right spot for those guys to make plays. You could argue one or two of them was underthrown. The guy still made the plays. And if I was watching that game last night and it was Justin Fields throwing those passes and the receivers making those plays, I would have been excited about that. I would have given him credit. I would have given him his flowers. So you have to give Russell Wilson credit where it's due. I was really impressed with what he was able to do last night after the Beanie Bishop first interception, first of two. But similar to Mike Tomlin, Russell Wilson, it doesn't matter. There's always going to be people who it's going to take, tying back into the beginning of the show, it's going to take a Super Bowl victory for some of these people to finally shut up.
Yeah, and then some of them still won't be happy if it's like a close game and they win with a Boswell field goal. Write down the date and the time and where you were when I said that, because that could be a very strong possibility. We thought maybe that could be it. This game had a 38 over and under, and the Steelers had 37 points. Like, that's mind blowing. It just shows you the lack of I don't even want to say like respect, like just the Vegas people, they're not out there to lose money. They got it so wrong with this. And the Jets are a good defense too. And Aaron Rodgers is still a very competent quarterback. There was times Patrick Queen, I think, only left the field once or twice the entire game. They tried to clear him out, open up that middle of the field. They had those shallow crossing routes almost open all day. They were bringing in all his buddies are there in New York. They bring Devontae Adams in. They really tried to get him going early. And I think that goes back to the booing at the beginning, because the Steelers, the 46-yard field goal, Chris Boswell, they're up. They strike first. They score on an opening drive. Cool. I mean, you had a nice little pass to Darnell Washington. You see the big man getting involved, and you just see more guys getting involved in the offense. But the defense gets a 3-and-out. Ogunjobi gets to Aaron Rodgers, and you're like, yo, let's roll, let's ride. It's time to cook. And there wasn't much cooking that was going on. The Steelers end up going 3-and-out and then give up a touchdown on the next series. And like I said, people around me, they get upset. I just sit there and try and just have the patience of a church mouse. Okay. I'm just going to sit there. I'm not going to make any noise. I'm not going to draw any attention to myself. You see the people that post on social media and everybody's like, that aged well, right? And that's where I'm at.
Oh, yeah.
Because
speaking from experience,
I feel so confident in this coaching staff's ability to adjust. Like when it was Matt Canada, forget game planning, let alone adjusting, right? I feel like Arthur Smith's got a pretty good pulse. There was like one play call. They emptied it out on like a 3rd and 1 or something like that. It's like the first play call I really questioned. It was the pass that Wilson put right in the numbers for Calvin Austin, and he dropped it. Calvin Austin isn't a guy that, I feel like is somebody that has the case of the dropsies. But aside from that, that just doesn't help the Boo Birds. And it's different guys with different touch on the ball. You see the spiral, you see everything else. But I always felt like with the coaching staff here, okay, the Jets just got one. But who's their staff? There's some guy they pulled up from being a defensive coordinator. He's still got the sheet. He's trying to be defensive coordinator and head coach at the same time. It usually doesn't mix very well. You see some offensive guys do it. You see some that just completely fail. Andy Reid can do it, but we've seen Nathaniel Hackett try and do it over in Denver, and then he even lost his duties last night. He's got the title of offensive coordinator, but he doesn't call the plays anymore. And it's like you could tell almost Aaron Rodgers runs that whole team, right? But the Steelers unable to get anything done. It was a very slow first quarter aside from that field goal. They had another short possession here where they end up punting. 3 of the 4 first possessions or series that they had were basically just 3 plays and out, that was actually the Jets. 3 of the first 4, so you only had the 1. Steelers were likewise the same. Aside from the field goal, they would punt on the next 3 for 9 yards, 3 -2, 3 for 2. And then you had a 9-play, 68-yard drive, still a field goal, and you're like, okay, we got to get a little bit more here. Or else this team is going to fall behind. It's, let me see where we're at here. Excuse me.
I was very worried about that. I remember that was one of my first half rants, was that I really wanted us to start scoring touchdowns. I went from appreciating the Boswell field goals, and I always appreciate everything Boswell does. Never want to take him for granted. I have a trend going on Twitter that every field goal he makes, I find some GIF of a guy doing the Holy Cross, praying to the gods, pointing to the sky, because I always want to give thanks for Chris Boswell. But yeah, to beat a team led by Aaron Rodgers, you got to score touchdowns. I know it didn't end up that way because they ended up, turtling up the Jets last night and not being very good. But after that second field goal, I think it was, I was like, this isn't sustainable. Like, we got to score touchdowns here pretty soon here, Mike. Put it on the whiteboard in the locker room at halftime, double underline it, touchdowns.
Yeah, Najee Harris got down to the 6. He ran for 5, then lost 5 on the very next one. Russell Wilson incomplete, sent out the field goal unit, chip shot. Rodgers comes back, responds right away, and they end up driving, 6 plays, 72 yards to go up 13-6 before you had very poor officiating last night. Steelers end up with a block here, but called for leverage on Minkah Fitzpatrick, correct? No,
the leverage was isn't the leverage on the interior line? Because they're using the person's body to.
Yeah, but it wasn't leverage was what the point was. It was.
No, Minkah was coming off the edge.
Yeah, just whoever broke through. Basically just jumped through in their hands and their motion. You have to I've done this before. It doesn't translate well in this little room with I'm a big dude, but like when you jump, anybody can picture physically trying to jump. What do you do when you try to jump? Well, if you're trying to reach to the ceiling or trying to get the height that you need, they even teach you this, any sport, you bring your hands up, and you probably even bring like a leg up. You bring your knee up as high as you can. I mean, your ab muscles, your core muscles, that's what helps you get some height and jump through. So his hands come up, hands come down. He's already past the guy, and they said it's leverage. And
Yeah.
it was garbage because it was a swing of those points where the Jets would have only had 13-6. It's like, okay, that's 7 points. That's not terrible. But now it's 15-6, and it's like, ew, this stinks. And there's
It's
just
2 scores.
yeah, and George Pickens making some of the catches that he did, the guys that were getting held. I had a photo that was just up from Pat Freiermuth getting completely there was the one pass interference was finally called, and it was good. And Russ put the ball there. They put it up and let your guys make a play, but the ball's there for them to make a play. It's not, no one's being necessarily overthrown or the ball. Some of these just look like little floaters, like an alley-oop
They're just
or
like
whatever.
Denver. They're just like Denver. Pickens drew a big pass interference against Denver, and that's something that I gave credit to Justin Fields for, and I gave credit to Russell Wilson for, is pass interference, but the yards count as yards. And Freiermuth, I feel like Freiermuth had a really good game, and it's always fun to see Pat come into his zone like that, because he's talked about ad nauseum how appreciative he is and how much he loves being a Steeler, hearing the Muth chants, being the guy to take over for Heath Miller. He knows how much that means to Steeler fans, especially inside of the stadium. And his one-handed catch kind of stole the show, but there was another catch he made right before the offensive explosion where Russell Wilson, they talked about it on the broadcast. The guy came free in Russell Wilson's face, and he kind of sidearmed it like baseball style to Freiermuth about 4 or 5 yards in front of his face. Freiermuth took it like 30-plus yards himself. So Freiermuth had himself a day, and you can draw a direct line back to Russell Wilson giving him the opportunities. And with a player like Freiermuth, it's never been about the talent level or the draft selection or any of that, but he's always been talked about as a guy who, man, if only he had more opportunities. To go back to Kenny Pickett, his first game without Matt Canada, the first game without Matt Canada against the Bengals, and actually being told to utilize the middle of the field. Pat Freiermuth went over 100 yards out of nowhere. So he's got the ability to make plays and be a game changer for the Steelers. He just hasn't seen the amount of opportunities a guy of his skill level should or could. Most people would agree when he's on, he's a top 10 tight end, especially a receiving threat style. So his one-handed catch was a big deal, but I just wanted to highlight that play too, that he made a couple of plays for the Steelers throughout this game, as well as George Pickens, obviously. But and it all has to do with these players being given the opportunities from their quarterbacks and having the plays drawn up from Arthur Smith. I always thought the Arthur Smith hate, like comparing him to Matt Canada and stuff, was really premature.
Really? Yeah, this team's scoring touchdowns, even if it's Fields not seeing, maybe not getting the primary read or getting the ball to, executing the play the way they maybe drew it up. And then it kind of breaks down and he runs in for a touchdown. And I was taking some heat because it's like, well, look at his rushing touchdowns. It's like, this isn't Lamar Jackson here. Some of these weren't necessarily by design, but it's great that he doesn't also give up negative plays. So I'm going to give his credit.
Way better in the red zone this year than we were under Canada. It's like such a difference, the red zone numbers with Arthur Smith right now, and the amount of times we're using play action. Like, there were a lot of screenshots and graphics going around after week 3 of how we're only a ranking or two higher than we were last year. And it's like, it doesn't really feel that way now, does it? When everything's working and everything's clicking, back-to-back weeks over 30 points, the red zone numbers look good, receivers are making plays, tight ends are making plays. I think a little bit of credit should be given to Arthur Smith.
Absolutely. I said Michael Pruitt being back in that lineup. You're not going to see him on the stat sheet, but it certainly was a factor in just being able to block. The whole offensive line definitely should get some credit with this. But as
Mason McCormick graded out as the top rookie lineman, pass grading wise. Mason McCormick graded out as the top rookie lineman, pass grading wise. I think he a total of, how many times Russ throw? 31, 32. 31, 32 pass snaps,
29.
Pass blocking snaps, 0 pressures.
Yeah. I mean, at first I was a little concerned about that, as we should be. Ryan McCollum starting as center. There was a lot of major contributions everywhere on this team, and I don't want to lose the one point you just made about the play action, because there was one third or fourth quarter where Russ faked me out of my own seat. and he had the ball. I didn't even realize like he actually had the ball. It was wild. I'm pretty sure you know the play that it was one of these big plays. I'm going to go through all the big plays. 7 different receivers end up catching a pass. But before I do that, man, I'll tell you, Broderick Jones, Dan Moore Jr., all of these guys were playing well. Holding Quinnen Williams, McDonald there. Why can't I think of the other dude's name? He ended up getting pancaked too, maybe by McCollum actually.
Tumalu?
No, for the Jets defensive line. And I can't think of his name at the second. Hold on one second. Kinlaw ends up getting.
Javon Kinlaw.
Javon Kinlaw ends up getting. Like you said, Mosley didn't really show. Now I know they were without DJ Reed, they were without Carter, their nickel corner. Gardner may have left for a play or whatever, but they were trying to shut down George Pickens among others. And the big plays and the amount of players that were involved on the offensive side of the ball. Pickens 5 catches on 9 targets for 111 yards and a touchdown. Pat Freiermuth only the 2 catches, but for 51 yards, both big plays. He had a long of 30. Pickens' long was 44. Darnell Washington, 4 targets, 4 catches, 36 yards. Calvin Austin, the 1. He did have a drop. But yeah, he was wide open off of that play fake. I mean, it was insane how open he was. Jalen Moore.
I thought he was going to score at any time touchdown plus 550. When Calvin Austin's the only guy on the screen, you're thinking he's housing that, and of course he didn't.
Well, and that's okay.
Crucial first down.
Yeah, crucial. Anywhere. I'm like, they were just like, could they have run the clock out at the end? I was waiting for Najee to just stop, and just start dancing near the goal line and not go in.
The game went this well that I was shocked. I looked up at my I was on my phone for 5 minutes. I looked up at the TV, saw Najee run his last touchdown, and I thought this game's still on. I thought the game was over because it went that well. When's the last time you could say that about a Pittsburgh Steeler game? Many moons.
Just leaving happy every phase of football. Very little to bitch about. By the way, it was 6 players, not 7. Najee was targeted once, but didn't have a catch. But Van Jefferson, a touchdown from Van Jefferson. You're talking about Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson and Darnell Washington, in addition to your stars like Pickens and Freiermuth. Najee, by the way, 21 carries, 102 yards. It's good for a 4.9 average. Warren had a 3.7 average on 12 carries, 44 yards. That's still the balance you wanted. 36 running attempts. Russell Wilson snuck in there. I sent you the thing where it was the presser and it was like the snarky reply that Tomlin had. He was like, it was a sneak. I was like, why'd you have Russell get in there? But the officiating crew was poor, man. It was bad. At any point, I felt like they were going to just take it away. You didn't know the measurement and the spot. Some of those spots they just took forever. It was poor, and it really takes away from the games because you're sitting there and the Steelers have all this momentum, right? You have Beanie Bishop, not just one. How many players could say they have a Russell Wilson ball from an interception? And Beanie has 2. And I heard
Aaron Rodgers.
Who'd I say? I'm sorry, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Aaron Rodgers. Interception, they're not as rare air this year apparently, but Beanie Bishop ends up getting 2. I heard a rumor that he was looking to get one of those signed. He got the Sunday Night Football game ball as well, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw him and Russ got game balls. You could see they already had them painted because they were in their hands. When they get game balls, we'll have them painted 2 of the 4 sides of the football. Back here, it's all white. They'll get 2 of them painted white and then have the stuff written on them Beanie Bishop, first career interception, Sunday Night Football, at home versus the Jets, etc. Russell Wilson's probably said something first career win as a Steeler, Sunday Night Football versus the Jets. And, I was happy for Beanie because Beanie coming out of camp was a camp darling. A lot of people had him pegged as one of the better undrafted free agents coming into the NFL out of West Virginia. A lot of people thought he might get drafted in the 6th or 7th round. For whatever reason, didn't. Happens every year. Guys that maybe should go in those later rounds don't. And he was very prioritized free agent. I believe he got one of, if not the highest, undrafted free agent contract the Steelers gave out. Had a good camp. Season starts, has a pretty good game against the Falcons, then kind of falls into a bit of a slump, gets picked on a little bit here and there throughout the games. Couple mental mistakes here and there. And then he has a career night last night. And I know the one bounced off of Garrett Wilson's hands, but he still did be in the right place at the right time. Yeah. And Collinsworth even said at one point.
The return off of that was great.
Was down to the 1-yard line. Yeah, great return. And without Devontae Adams laying out for the tackle, doing probably the best thing he did all night for the Jets, it would have been a pick 6. And Collinsworth mentioned on the broadcast, I didn't want to go back and check myself because I didn't want to be behind with the game and with the internet and like just getting spoil alerts. But he was mentioned Beanie might have even like gotten a fingertip on that ball that bounced off of Garrett Wilson, like just slightly, or at least screened his vision with his hand. And I can tell you, even when a DB doesn't touch the ball, if he gets his hand up in front of it and like blocks your vision, it can really mess with your hand-eye coordination. And when you watch the slow motion replay of the ball bouncing off of Garrett Wilson's chest, he doesn't even have his hands in the right spot. Like the ball bounces off almost close to his face mask, and his hands are closer down to the top of the number 5 on his jersey. So bouncing off his chest or not, he was in the right place at the right time. And on top of the 2 interceptions, those are the wow plays, the big plays. He also had a couple of really impressive tackles for little to no gain. So he had himself a night.
Yeah.
He was humming. I think he needed it because being the starting nickel cornerback for the Steelers, he plays a really important position. So to see him kind of regain his footing and gain confidence again was really encouraging and a good sign for the defense.
Yeah, and that defense needed it because Dante Jackson ended up, I believe he could have came back, but they did not bring him back in after halftime. James Pierre has been kind of trolling around out there. So Cam Sutton's a guy that could play anywhere. Primarily, they'll probably use him as a slot or like a pseudo safety, playing a midfielder, but he could play the boundary, and that's another guy that they could use when they get him. And it's good to see that now they don't have to worry about Beanie Bishop being any kind of liability. Beanie Bishop, by the way, played, let's see, the defense had 57 total plays on the field, and Beanie Bishop, 47 of the 57. He was only out for 10 plays. And, Aaron Rodgers is going to try and pick on him being why wouldn't you? I mean, that's sound advice. It's not only a rookie, but it's an undrafted guy that they have playing maybe in a position of weakness. And you got all of these like hot rod Ferrari wide receivers. You got Adams, you got Mike Williams, who might be in may or may not be in a different jersey in another week. We don't know. I know Steelers fans are clamoring for him. I still don't know. I liked him coming out of college, but I really don't know that he's not washed necessarily. You got Alan Lazard, Garrett Wilson, of course. Would be remiss to not mention him. So they got all of these guys.
Want. If they're going to call the Jets about Mike Williams,
fire sale. Your team
Garrett
sucks.
Wilson.
Yeah, your team sucks. Just send him over.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah,
you got Devontae now.
Yeah, the defense was great. But before I get over to all the other defensive kudos, because there's enough of them, I did want to highlight the top play, the longest plays for the Steelers. Russell Wilson to George Pickens, second quarter, 44 yards. Third quarter, Russell Wilson to George Pickens, 37 yards. Fourth quarter, Russell Wilson off the play fake, deep to Calvin Austin, 36 yards. Fourth quarter, again, Najee Harris breaks free, big play, 34-yard run. Russell Wilson, second quarter to Pat Freiermuth, 30 yards on the gain. All of those plays, all 6 of those, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, 5, I was wrong. Maths with Joe is not mathing right now.
Right, probably damn close to 6 because that play I mentioned earlier where Russell Wilson sidearmed it to Freiermuth and he ran after the catch, that was probably damn close to 30 yards.
They said it marked here for 21. I think he stepped out, but you would have been right. Yeah, okay. I think he stepped out ahead and then he rumbled a little further. And man, they were quick with the whistle on a lot of that too. Like Najee, they were just like, one guy might have like almost wrapped him and he's ready to break the tackle and like, let me go, man. Let me go. I'm actually
his running style too. I feel like the referee should be forced to like study film before their matchup or their game because Najee Harris is a known angry runner. He runs through tackles. Like he should have a longer whistle than most running backs.
They shouldn't be forced to. Like, you're already in the National Football League. This is something you should already do. You know your assignment.
Yeah.
You're going to know the tendencies of, hey, does this guy maybe – they already know, like, anybody that could be a problem player. I guarantee you DeMonte Casey is like they're going to huddle up and talk in the locker room and like, hey, watch out for this guy. Like, he's been known to lead with his helmet and he's been suspended or fined before. Like, those things are discussed just in the same way that teams are discussing, like Aaron Rodgers wanting to pick on Beanie Bishop or getting Devontae Adams involved. They game plan the same way, but oftentimes it doesn't seem like it. And maybe not everybody takes their job as seriously. The guy with the white cap definitely is. That's why he's got it. That's why he's in charge. But some of the other ones, sometimes I do wonder, you know what I mean? But those were huge plays. They still had a few more plays that were, 21 yards. Najee had a run for 18. There was the passes to Darnell Washington for 18 and 15, and then another 12-yarder to Pickens. It's been a while since I think I've been able to say that the Steelers have had like 5. Yes, count them 5. I'm sorry, I'm still tired. I'm running on coffee. You see me drinking it here in between, going back and forth here with Flash. But defensively, the Steelers, they had a 57-yard play that they allowed. That was the only one over 30. They had a couple 20-yard passes here, one in the fourth quarter. The Garrett Wilson, there was one in the second quarter to Lazard. And then... let's see, 2019, 18. They didn't give up a whole ton. Maybe a little bend, don't break. Rodgers was 24, 39, 276. He had a 70 QB rating. Not terrible, but he had the 2 picks to the 1 interception. He took the 1 sack early from Ogunjobi, but he got hit 8 times. And you tend to forget
Keanu
that.
Benton had a really good game. Keanu Benton graded out as the Steelers. I know PFF
awesome.
isn't everything, but Keanu Benton graded out as their best performer of the night with a 90.2 rating. George Pickens was shortly after that, 90.1. Highsmith, 84.3. Darnell Washington, shout out, 83.2. Love Darnell Washington. At one point, his first catch of the game, my girlfriend's on the couch. She goes, that guy's tall. Yeah, he gets that a lot.
Yeah.
And Beanie Bishop, 78.8. So 3 out of the top 5 performers, grade-wise on PFF, were defensive players. And Benton sometimes is harder to notice because if a defensive lineman doesn't get a sack, then he's not as noticed. But he falls right in line, coincidentally, with the type of player Cam Hayward is. Because Cam Hayward won't always light up the stat sheet with sacks every single game. But what they're able to do in the run game and pushing the pocket and collapsing the pocket and making the quarterback and running backs uncomfortable is really, really important, as highlighted by his Pro Football Focus grade right here of a 90.2.
Yeah, the defensive lineman, TJ Watt, I guess I'll throw in there, but Benton had 2 balls knocked down. Hey, Cam Hayward had the one. Yeah. TJ had another that was like right in his paws. It was almost like Joe Burrow just handing him off the ball. That's happened twice where TJ's picked
you know what's
off.
nice? Speaking of TJ, this is the first game, and I don't even know how long, that he didn't have to not do anything, but he didn't have to take over. First game in a long time, TJ Watt wasn't a big part of why the Steelers won. First time in a long time I haven't jokingly called the Steelers the Pittsburgh TJ Watts during the course of a game. So it's really, really encouraging and cool to see that the Steelers can win a game off of a game where TJ Watt doesn't make, that big of an impact. Of course, the offensive line is going to account for him as one of the best defensive players in football, but he didn't have a usual TJ Watt-esque game, and it was one of the more convincing wins the Steelers have had during the course of TJ Watt's career.
Yeah, and Watt had 2 of those quarterback hits. Alex Highsmith returning had 2 as well, and it gets understated just how well or how important he is against the run. Breece Hall, 12 attempts for 38 yards at 3.2 average. The Jets just weren't getting it done on the ground at all. Allen 2 for 4 for 2 yards, which was they just bottled it all up. By the way, I think PFF has Cam Hayward as the top ranked interior defensive lineman in the entire NFL. I don't know if that was coming in or just after.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah,
I heard that somewhere as well. The Pittsburgh Steelers right now, on account of yesterday and these last 2 games, have a 60-point scoring margin, according to Michael Birch, who is with the Steelers PR department. That's the 5th best in the NFL this season, and the 60-point scoring margin is the 8th best by Pittsburgh through 7 games since the AFL-NFL merger back in 1970. That's wild. They also have, according to Birch here, Dean Lowry's blocked field goal, the one that he actually did get. The Steelers have now blocked a kick, punt, field goal, or extra point in 3 straight games for the first time since 1991, which is just 1991 is like pretty much when I was first really getting into watching football as a kid, and Bill Cowher takes over in 92. So that's crazy to think about. You got to go back to Chuck Noll in order to the Chuck Noll's last season in 91 in order to have that kind of special teams play. And I had a pulse. I know it's going to sound like bullshit, but I'm watching those guys on the field as they're lining up for this Greg Zuerlein attempt. And something in my gut just told me it felt like they were fired up and they wanted a little bit of retribution for the penalty flag earlier, and be damned if they didn't go out there and just, that was scorched earth type stuff. They were like, especially that statement at the end in primetime with Najee getting that touchdown. on the ground. Like I said, it's Najee's not about the vanity statistics or whatever. He probably should have had a rushing touchdown earlier in the year, but this just felt to me like we're going to show everybody on this stage that we're here and we're legit and we're for real, and it feels good. I'm not sure. Am I missing anybody in this whole grand scheme of things? I mean, Deshaun Elliott, maybe.
Oh yeah, Elliott continues to impress. Elliott's been
Yeah,
you could make the argument pretty easily actually that he's been a better signing than Patrick Queen. Not to come down on Queen too hard. Queen's kind of found his groove a little bit, especially I think his best game versus the Raiders, and he wasn't terrible last night. But Elliott has been a key performer in every single game this season so far, whether it's creating turnovers or coming up in the run game. I'm pretty sure he has a higher Pro Football Focus grade than Minkah Fitzpatrick right now. So he's been a slam dunk signing, and he's a tone setter. And yeah, the block, I'm with you. I didn't get a feel they were going to do it right then and there, but you could tell how much they wanted it because that was the block that shortly after they blocked it, they ran over to Danny Smith, and that was the clip that went viral of them all like razzing up Danny Smith and pushing him around, and they're like, oh, they love their coach Danny Smith, and you can see it. The special teams
yeah,
players, they really do. And when it goes like that, it's just you feed off that energy as a fan. Like the Najee walk-off touchdown, he jumped in the stands. Like that was so cool to see, and it's great to see him still embrace Steeler fans like that and be so proud to be a Steeler and so excited for the Steelers, full knowing that he wasn't given his fifth-year option. Will he be here next year? You don't know yet. Will Russell Wilson be here next? We don't know that kind of stuff yet. But for now, you got to enjoy the ride. You got to have fun because I've said this a million times, and I've told people in person on the show, the NFL season is the shortest of all sports seasons. So when your team is doing good, excuse me, when your team's doing good, you got to enjoy it. There's plenty of time to be miserable during the NFL season. So when you're coming off a big win and everybody's happy, you have to live in the moment and enjoy it.
yeah. And I'm enjoying Danny Smith. Danny Smith, Mike Tomlin, but Danny Smith was roaming those sidelines after that extra point attempt that was blocked. Couldn't
Yeah.
spit that all out. Boy, I mean, he was ticked off, dude, for like quite some time. I mean, he wasn't letting it go to a point of like, I was waiting for, you see it more often in college, but like one of these bench warnings where they're
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
a team warning, like coaches on the field and stuff. I mean, he was in their ass. He was
Collinsworth and
chewing
Tarico
them.
were even like, that's a bad call. Like Collinsworth and Tarico are usually pretty like unbiased-ish
Yeah,
towards
yeah.
the referees, but they were like, I don't understand what they're talking about with this leverage call. So you even had them on our side, and you could see it in Danny Smith. You could see it in the defensive players, like the boos from the crowd. Yeah, it was a bad call, and Danny Smith went to bat for his guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, like the announcers themselves, there's probably some directives out there to mind what necessarily you might say.
Mhm.
Don't want to tarnish the league or make it look silly with the calls. But, the Russell Wilson thing, just jumping back to Russ one last second, it does look a lot different. They get the New York Giants, who are dumpster fire. They get an extra day, the game to prepare prime time, and then they're going to go off to bye week land
Yeah.
and maybe even heal up some more. But this team coming in was 28th in passing yards per game with 166. Russell gets them to a promised land of 264 in just one game. I had mentioned
He's the first Steeler quarterback ever in their first start to I had it from CBS Sports. It was like the first Steeler quarterback ever in his first start to like throw for over 250 and 2 touchdowns and something else. I don't know where it went, but if people follow NFL CBS on Twitter, you can find it yourself. But yeah, he made history for the Steelers last night. It couldn't have gone much better for Russell Wilson in his debut last night, and the way he seems to appreciate the fan base and the city and this opportunity he's been given. It's really hard not to root for the guy and appreciate what he put on tape last night. It was really fun to watch from a fan's perspective, sitting on his couch at home. I can't remember the last time. I know last week we put up 30 points, but the last time the game was that much in hand, seemingly anyway. I felt like once the third quarter was over, you never want to fully count out a guy like Aaron Rodgers, but it felt like the game was in hand. Large thanks to what Russell Wilson was able to do. It was cool to watch.
Yeah, I found your stat.
Here we go.
Russell Wilson, courtesy of NFL on CBS,
Thank you.
most pass yards in a Steelers debut since 1940. and only quarterback to lead the Steelers to 30-plus points in the first start with the team since 1940. So basically almost since their inception.
Who was that? Who was 1940? Y.A. Tittle?
1940. Something tells me it's like I don't even know. The first name, William Shakespeare, their first ever draft pick, pops in my brain, but that's not who it was, or like a John Blood McNally. But we're talking like leather helmets. We're
talking nearly 100 years since somebody had done that for the Steelers in their first debut.
Yeah, and if we care enough, I could probably find out. We'll go back. You go way back to that in 1940. You know what? I honestly don't know. That's going to be a good trivia question. We'll leave that to our listeners and viewers.
Comment
in
below.
The comments. Comment. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. There isn't much more we could say about this game, to be honest. Mike Tomlin went from everyone, kind of crying, complaining, having their favorites, being ugly about loving the backup quarterback. Now, if Russ struggles in the next game, of course, they're going to jump right back to it and question this. But Mike Tomlin kind of had that feeling all along. They know what they saw in practice. They were able to bring it out there, and kudos to him.
Give him time, though. It's a PSA to the fans. I can tell you from experience, because I started the game very patient, then I got impatient, and then I was proven wrong very fast. So if Russell Wilson starts slow next week, I think he's earned the respect and the patience from fans at this point to at least wait till halftime. If he starts slow before we start getting upset on Twitter and stuff, because I can tell you it doesn't feel good to make a statement out of to tweet or text something emotionally, especially when you're pissed off. Kids, never hit send when you're pissed off and then be proven wrong so fast. The only thing that made me feel better was it was to the benefit of the Steelers, and now I'm ready to ride. Russell Wilson, baby.
Man, I was trying to look up this 1940s team. It's just a completely different game back then. There were
no passing allowed.
No. Quite the contrary. I mean, there was only 189 attempts over not necessarily 13 games. Hold on a second. There was a 13-week season, so there's, once again, maths with Joe. So there was maybe 11 games total, 189 passing attempts by seven different players. No, just with the 1940 Steelers. That's wild.
Gotcha.
That's wild. I'm sorry, I don't go that far back. We may have to consult our historian and a guy who was there, Mr. Brian E. Roach. So we'll talk to him next time. But Zach, thanks for joining me, man. It's good to have you back on. Here we go, man. We're on board. Let's cook. I don't want to say let's ride, because that's that corny Denver Broncos rust. That the old rust.
I saw Adam Crowley tweeted out, "Steelers Nation, add fries."
There was I thought of this. I have an 11-year-old daughter, so don't judge me. But the old Russell can't come to the phone right now. Why? Because he's dead. So that's a Taylor Swift lyric there. But and we'll get that. We're going to get Sierra and Taylor. Now we'll get Russ versus Patrick Mahomes Christmas Day. It looks like.
That reminds me of a joke I heard a comedian do. He said his son wrote this joke. His son was like, "Hey, Dad, do you know why dinosaurs aren't allowed, or you know why dinosaurs can't shop in the grocery store?" And he said, "No, why, son?" He said, "Because they're all dead."
Jeez, that's so bad. It's dark too. It's bad. But yeah, Steelers 28th in passing and 20th in points scored heading into the game, and they only had 20.7, and now that just keeps inching up. Yeah. You give this elite defense at least an above average offense, an offense that could even come back if they get into some shootouts. We'll see what happens, man. I'm excited. I'm geeked up, and I try to temper my expectations, but this was even beyond what I imagined. I still thought it was going to be maybe a close game with this Jets defense. Blowing the doors off of them, it just shows like a lot of this schedule later in the year. The Eagles defense isn't as strong as it used to be. Kansas City is, but they got some injuries and stuff that they're still dealing with. That's way off in the distance where they could heal up, but yeah, it really looks like it's going to come down to, we'll see what the Ravens do on Monday night here, and then we'll come back, we'll swing back around. Maybe one of these days we'll even have, we'll throw Brian in with me and you, and we'll have a little triangle of terror here, because I know he was really chomping on the bit to be on here and say some stuff, but he'll get his words in maybe later in the week. Thank you, Zach, once again for joining us. Don't be a stranger, man.
Of course. I'm always happy to be here, especially after a big win like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you've got the Russell Wilson t-shirt. I know I was teasing you because I know you're a Fields guy, but you're also, you're Flash. You're going whichever way. You're going to support. Like one of these callers called in. There were quite a few people that were upset about the boos, and one of the callers had said, "Hey, whatever guy's taking the snaps, does he have that black and gold jersey on? Then I'm supporting him." And I thought there was
Steelers
nothing
guy,
better
team
than
first,
that.
not me first. That's what
That's
I always say. Whoever happens to be the quarterback, I'm going to ride or die for it. I want them to do well because it means the Steelers are doing well. And yeah, that's part of the nature of the beast. That's the cross I bear. Is sometimes you put takes out there, sometimes you give your opinions, and you end up being wrong, or you end up being proven wrong by the other player. And right now, Russell Wilson, I have nothing but good things to say about what he did last night. I am very excited for the future with him, at least for this season. Not going to worry about next year right now. And that's why I spent $36 on this shirt week 1. I'm going to get my $36 worth.
I know, man. I had a jersey too. Cousin was wearing a Russell Wilson. We were like, I'm usually superstitious to the point of wearing block number jerseys and matching the team, but I don't have anybody that's still there, and they've been wearing them sporadically. So I was like, you know what? I'm wearing this Wilson jersey because if this goes south, I might not get another chance to do it. So I made
exactly. Sure. That's exactly what I thought. I was like, when I got this shirt, I was like, at least I'm going to get to wear it because he's starting week 1, and then he got hurt, so I didn't get to wear it. So yesterday I was like, hey, at least I'm going to get at least one use out of this shirt. And I don't know if I'll get around to getting a jersey, but next week I'll be wearing the same T-shirt again. It's Russell Wilson from Giant Eagle. They kind of threw it back to 90s style, and he's riding the steel curtain ride at Kennywood.
Nice. That's a pretty cool one, man. Well, that'll do it for us, folks. Once again, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you can listen to this show anywhere podcasts are available, you can watch it on YouTube and on Spotify. And don't forget to follow us on our social media channels. We also have the website at steelcityunderground.com with some great written contributions as well. So that'll do it for us. My name is Joe. His name is Zach. Until next time, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.